Welcome to Summer of the Arts Creative Conversations. I'm Lisa Barnes, Executive Director, and I have a very special guest who may not realize it, but I've kind of known him for like 15 years or something like that. So I'm going to let you go ahead and introduce yourself because I don't know how you want to portray your profile. There's so much there.
Yeah, I have lots of different hats.
Yep.
My name is Chuy Renteria. I am an author, a dancer for most of my life. I've been dancing since I was 14. I'm an artist, community organizer, you could say, and I work at the University of Iowa.
So, like so many other people we've been talking to through the creative conversations, you're one of those people that has a day job, but you do lots of other things. And my history, honestly, is my kids used to go to Nolte, and they did the drop-in breakdancing classes you used to teach there. They absolutely loved it. So, like I said, I've been kind of a fan of yours for a long time, and you've been at our festivals dancing as well, which is really fun. And I didn't know that you were writing a book, and it's been out, what, 2 years now?
Yeah, I think it's been 2 years.
Yeah, because my daughter, who actually lives on the East Coast now, said, "Mom, Chewy wrote a book, and can you pick it up for me at Prairie Lights?"
Oh, that's great.
And I was like, okay, cool. So tell us about your book and, why you decided to write it. Was this a pandemic thing that something you've always wanted to do?
It's something I've always wanted to do. So, like you said, I have so many different hats, and I've always loved reading and writing, and the classes that I would gravitate towards in school, in middle school and high school, would be literature and writing courses, and I always loved it. And this is when I do a lot of visits to classes now, especially like high school age classes, I tell them I did that thing what a lot of people do, is I felt like I had to choose between dance and writing, and at the time when I was of high school age, I chose dance. So that's, I met Leslie Nolte, and that's how I got in with her in her studio, and I was teaching there. But I always had this kind of desire to get back to writing sometime, and it kind of, there was a lot of different things and community partners that I went through. Shout out to Andrea Wilson, who was with the Iowa Writers House.
Yes.
That was her organization before she moved on from it. But yeah, I eventually got to the University of Iowa Press, and I wrote it during, it wasn't necessarily a pandemic project, but it ended up being a pandemic project because I wrote it in the brunt of the pandemic, in lockdown.
You have a copy with you?
Yes.
Let's hold it up for the camera so everybody can see.
Yeah, here it is right here.
And the title. And so what exactly is it about?
Yeah, so it's called We Heard It When We Were Young, and that is me. That is me at about 10 years old, and it is a memoir. It is a I say that knowing that it's also a collection of different kind of snapshots of my life. So it goes through when I was that kid at 10 years old. It goes through when I'm in 14, when I first learned. There's a whole story here about when I first started dancing and got into the dancing in West Liberty. And it's at once kind of a story of my childhood and coming of age, but also a reflection on the town that I grew up in, which is West Liberty, Iowa. And kind of all the good and all the bad and all the complicated humanness of that. So.
How exciting!
Yeah.
So, is there another one in the works?
I do have some long-term writing projects that I kind of have inkling about in my head, but definitely not autobiographical.
Yeah.
Which is a lot of the things I've written so far have been kind of personal, deeply personal reflections.
Right.
The next one I want to do I want to write something where there aren't people alive who have judgments about what's going on in the portrayals. So yeah.
Yeah, I think that would be really interesting. I think about sometimes as I'm getting older, maybe I should write down some of my history. My mom passed away a little over a year ago, and I was wishing that was something I had from her, and learning more about the history and what it was like, when she was a kid and stuff in the 40s. And so I think it's important, and being able to do it in a way that you can comfortably share with other people, I think is absolutely amazing.
Yeah, there's something about being able, especially for myself and my community, and I'm Mexican. My parents are from northern Mexico, both of them from different areas in northern Mexico, so Mexican American. And there's something about being able to tell the story that we experienced without anybody telling it on behalf of us.
Yes.
And just the whole idea of telling it in the first place, because I've gotten so many comments and messages and emails from folks that this is the first time they've really read or experienced something that they saw themselves reflected in, which is huge. And people from West Liberty and beyond, like people from all over the country have been sending me messages like that, which I think it speaks to the urgency of it.
I totally agree. I was just going to say the urgency and people learning that there may be differences and people come from different backgrounds and different cultures, but the bottom line is we're all human beings and we have that shared humanity. And part of what Summer of the Arts does is trying to build community through the arts. And it's fascinating to me to hear the stories. We had an interview that we did with Alicia Velasquez and talking about Native American culture. And it's important for us to, as people and people in Iowa City, learn and appreciate there may be a different viewpoint, but it doesn't necessarily make it a controversy.
Yeah.
It shouldn't.
No, exactly, yeah. And there's lots of intersecting related experiences in the way that everything we just talked about, and with dance and different types of experiences in the area, in Iowa City, in West Liberty, in Iowa, and how those stories aren't shared necessarily, and what happens when they do, and it kind of recontextualizes these spots and these landscapes for folks who have been here all their life, right? So,
and hopefully build more connections.
Yeah, exactly.
Too, through that shared experience. So I want to talk about your dance. You said that you started when you were 14. What made you get into dance, and how did you go about it? In West Liberty, was there a studio there or something? Or did you just watch TV and decided you wanted to try breakdancing?
Well, it was a fascinating time. So it was around 1999, and there was a dance studio there. I mean, it's the same dance studio, it's still there in West Liberty. But we actually that wasn't the catalyst for us. What was the catalyst was there was at once hundreds of dancers all throughout Iowa at the time, and the internet. At the late 90s was when a lot of families were able to afford computers, and we used our dial-up internet, and we were able to research and watch these. It would take 45 minutes to download a 10-second clip, but we would be like, oh, what are they doing? And a really big shout out should go to there's a Laotian community, Southeast Asian Laotian community in West Liberty, and they were the ones that really started dancing at the time. And it happens like it does with lots of other things that happen in the Midwest, was they learned from their cousins out in the coasts, right? Or their cousins down south, and they would go on summer vacation and they would learn these moves, and they would come back to West Liberty during the year and start practicing them. So there was all sorts of kids trying it in the park, in the trailer park, in the school, and I caught on, and I just kept on going. And there's still a few, less than a handful, but still some folks that are still doing it from that time, so 25 years ago, whatever it is now, yeah.
And you actually got a Bachelor of Arts in Dance from the University of Iowa, right?
Yep. So I did, the way that we approached dance was it was makeshift, right? It was, the thing I love so much about it, and I talk about it in the book, is it wasn't teachers, it wasn't coaches, it was our own thing. It was us making it as we go. And especially because we didn't have, we had the internet, but it wasn't the internet like it is now. It wasn't like everything at our fingertips. We could watch people from Romania dancing in real time, right? It was this kind of Wild West where it felt like we were making it up, even though we weren't, right? Yeah. But it felt like it, and that was really important. So it was just in our garage, us in our garage or driveway, and eventually I started bit by bit, years after the passage of time, learning things like what counts are, learning what choreography is, how to approach it. And when I graduated, I felt like I needed to choose, which is its own thing.
Yeah.
But it was a passion of mine. So yeah, I went through the program at the university and I got in and had a lot of catching up to do in terms of, concert dance. I took
Yes.
ballet, modern, jazz, everything. And yeah, it was a fun journey and very intensive because you have to, as somebody who gets into that whole scene late, you have to kind of catch up.
So what were your thoughts when you were actually in college? Did you want to be a professional dancer at that point?
Yeah. I think it was in the University of Iowa dance program is so amazing because it has lots of focus on technique, and there's like a kind of like, it's not official, but there's like a modern track and a ballet track, and then there's also lots of support in terms of like choreography, kind of teaching, history, and yeah, when I was going through it, I really felt like I wanted to be, a professional in a company or some type of like choreographer. What happened right when I graduated, a few months after actually, is I got a knee injury. And it wasn't serious, but it was enough for me to have to take a couple months off. And really the most important thing is maybe reevaluate a little bit and realize that like, hey, if all I'm doing is dance and focused on it, and even if you don't get an injury, the career and the lifespan of a dancer is not, you
Right.
can't be dancing the same way you did when you were 18 when you're 55, right?
Yeah.
Not to say that you can't find a rich career in it, but at the time what I was thinking about is, is there other passions I have, and are there other opportunities for me to explore in conjunction with dance rather than just it being the sole thing that I do? And that's what I did.
I recently saw a video of Angela Lansbury dancing at the Oscars, and she was so amazing. And I looked up, and she would have been like 62 when she did that or something. She was around 60, and just so tremendously talented. And I have to say, I grew up as a dancer, and I came to the University of Iowa. I took a jazz class and realized how much I didn't know. And I'm from Des Moines originally, and it was like, yeah, I'm not going to have a career in dance. I can tell that already, but I still love dance, obviously. And when I was 22, they had a cattle call at the university for dancers because Gene Kelly was coming to campus.
Oh, wow.
And they wanted to do the Singing in the Rain, and there were probably 200 of us that did this. But I can say I danced at Kinnick Stadium in front of Gene Kelly, which is cool,
Yeah,
I remember him coming out, and it's like, oh, he is really little. He's very short, but always somebody that I admired. And my daughter grew up dancing, obviously at Nolte. Leslie's story, she had an injury too.
Exactly.
And
yeah.
so you're very right, but I think as far as dance goes, just being able to have that passion and still try to be involved. My daughter got involved with the ballroom dance club at the university when she was there, and thoroughly enjoyed that. And then she had an ankle injury, so she hasn't been able to do much, but having that passion is great. And so do you still teach? I mean, obviously I know you still dance too.
At the moment, I'm teaching some individuals, and that's been really fun and enriching. My friend actually opened up a studio, and it's the first like hip hop dance studio dedicated to hip hop dance in Iowa.
Wow.
And it's over in North Liberty, and it's called All the Way Up.
Wow.
So shout out to Joel and Liz, who they're a couple, and they started it together. And I was teaching there, and then the pandemic happened, and then I had a baby, and my baby's 19 months old right now. So I've always have, and I've been talking to them, and I was like, there's plans to come back, but I'm just trying to balance. Like, it's one of those things that you talk to artists nowadays, it's not even like, oh, I have my 9 to 5 and my passion art project. You have 9 to 5 passion project, another passion project, the side teaching gig, and
family.
Yeah, and family, exactly, right? Family being first a lot of times, right? So I always want to come back, but it's trying to figure out kind of maybe when Marisol, my daughter, gets a little bit older, she loves dancing, and her and I have dance sessions every night. So maybe be like,
That's
hey, do you want to come to the
wonderful.
studio with us? You know, so
That's really exciting. So, what's your day job now?
So I work at the University of Iowa, and I'm with the Division of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion.
Okay.
My unit is IESI, which is Inclusive Education and Strategic Initiatives. In a nutshell, what we do is we provide workshops focused on DEI to the campus community and
Wonderful.
actually to the community at large. So we'll get requests from libraries or retirement homes or really any type of organization, and we, depending on how it works with our schedule, we can go and visit and kind of do workshops on everything from implicit bias to we have a LGBTQ safe zone project that we lead, how to be an ally to the queer community, and it's been amazing. I love the team and I love what we do.
I was gonna say that sounds like it'd be very fulfilling for you.
Yeah.
That's exciting. And you were at Hancher before that, right?
Yep. Yeah, and so it's been this natural progression of at Hancher, I worked with artists and we integrated them with community partners, and we did lots of engagement with that. And so this has been this natural progression of that, and really getting this deep community work and this deep work. Even if it's with the university, it's still like faculty and staff are people, and people that want to learn, and people that want to find out how to interact with other people in the best way, and that's what we do.
It's very interesting to look at people's different personality types, and like you said, how to interact with people. We had a staff change last year, and so we did one of the personality tests, and it was really interesting to sit down, and it wasn't anything that surprised me, but it did make me more mindful in how I interact with my coworkers. And so the fact that the university is doing this, and not just within the university, but also in the community at large, I think is tremendous. So I have to ask, side question, are you fluent in Spanish?
I am not actually. So that's a fun question, because it depends. It's almost like it depends on who you ask. Like if I were in a room of other Spanish speaking folks, I would say no, I am not fluent. But compared to most people who, like, if you were to go to college and take a lot of Spanish in college, I would probably know about the same, maybe even a little bit more. And it's also like I always say it's like a muscle that you have to practice. So if I've been speaking with Spanish speakers and kind of engulfed in that community, in that language interaction, I feel like I would be able to like catch back on. But right now I feel a little shaky. I'm trying to work on speaking more Spanish in our home for our daughter.
Teach your daughter, to be bilingual.
Just the other day, because she says hi and bye, and she busted out and hola, and we're like, oh my gosh, say it again. And of course, she, as soon as we're like, let's have her perform, she's like, no, I'll say it on my time. That's fair.
I think it's something, if you don't learn it when you're young, it's definitely harder. I took French for years, and I can still understand some, but couldn't speak it if you paid me. My daughter has a knack for languages, and she did a study abroad in Ecuador to work on her Spanish. And then she did a study abroad in France to work on her French, because she had a French minor, but she took Spanish for 4 years and various other things. And she loved being able to be immersed in it. And she said that was the best thing. And she still does some online daily thing to keep up on her Spanish, which I think is great. And she's always said, when I have kids, I would love to have them be bilingual. And I think it's so important. Again, it's understanding other people. It's developing that understanding. We were talking off camera about the fact that you've been using some sign language with your daughter, which I think is absolutely fascinating. And it's just, again, it's understanding other people, being able to communicate, finding the ways to find what's in common.
Yeah.
And a lot of times it's the arts.
Yeah, no, exactly.
Yeah.
Right. And the thing that we on our team talk to a lot with people is, because there's, are you in a growth mindset or like a deficit mindset, right? And when it comes to interactions with folks, we hear from so many different, one of the big resistances we hear from folks is, oh, there's so much we need to learn and to know, and I'm so busy, and all, it's just adding to it. And we like to kind of see if we can reframe it with, this is an opportunity, right?
Yes.
Like if you, instead of looking at it like a challenge, it's an opportunity to connect with somebody else, right? So maybe if you look at it as an opportunity to communicate with somebody via sign language, or through Spanish if they're not an English speaker, it's an opportunity to try to connect, like you said. Yeah, and I love that piece about the arts, and I'm a huge advocate of that, of being able to connect. My wife is an art teacher, and today she's subbing right now, and she actually teaches in my hometown of West Liberty, and so much connection comes, it transcends language barriers, right? So like how many students that, there's a dual language program in West Liberty, and there's lots of students that, only speak one language, and there's also, it's this melting pot of like, there's English, and you hear Portuguese and French and Spanish all in this, this third grade class, and she's able to navigate a lot of that with, like, hey, it doesn't matter if we can't speak the same language, we can paint the same way, or she can, of course, it's more complicated and nuanced, and it gets really tricky when you're trying to do it, not trying to say it's easy, all you have to do is paint, but there is that connection, that first step through the arts.
So I have to share, this is the 40th anniversary of Iowa Arts Festival this year. And I always tell this story. My favorite memory, since I've been with Summer of the Arts since 2009, was the Iowa Arts Festival in 2012, and we had Los Lobos as our headliner, which I love them anyway, but I had an intern who was bilingual. And so I got up and I welcomed the audience, and she translated in Spanish for me. And she was so incredibly nervous. And I was like, Jenny, it's okay. I'll try not to go too fast. And she's very much bilingual, but it was being up on stage, and having to translate. But it was such a wonderful night. I think it was one of the largest crowds that we've had at Arts Fest, and such a great memory for me. And after I did the introduction, I went and sat in the merchandise booth or something that had a good view of the stage, and just watched the performance in this huge crowd.
Yeah, that's
awesome. That was just wonderful.
Was that the only time that they performed?
That's the only one that I'm aware of. Yeah, 2012.
Yeah. So I was at that. Yeah. I remember like being in the crowd.
It was when the stage was at Dubuque Street, and so it was all the way down Dubuque Street, almost to Washington. It was packed. Yeah, it was so much fun. So, do you have any other Summer of the Arts things that are great memories for you?
Yeah, I mean, and that's the fascinating thing with starting so young. I remember coming up to the Ped Mall and coming up for different, weekends and Friday nights. We would come with the Friday night concert series, and sometimes we would dance if the band played the right music for us. And so I've been coming since 1999, and there's so many memories. But the one that kind of sticks out for me is, I forget exactly what year it was, but we actually threw like a breaking dance tournament, and we had kind of like this really fun, like I was able to kind of organize it, and it was more than just us performing. It was kind of this back and forth that was really fun. But there's so many times where like Arts Fest or even Jazz Fest, we would go and just like be within the crowd. And I'm really excited now that my daughter is she'll be 2 this coming summer, and like I already said how much she loves to dance, and we're really stoked at trying to bring her to some of the different festivals and have her just soak it all in, because she just loves being in that type of environment and vibe.
Yeah, that's one of the things I love about Friday night concerts, especially, is people getting up and dancing, and kids especially being out there dancing, and go play on the playground a little, and then come over and dance, and get a little drink and snack from mom and dad, and it's a great people watching time, but especially with the kids there. That's one of my favorites too.
Yeah, I love how there's one. It was a Friday night. I forget. Again, like time is so so especially after the pandemic, you're like, what was a year ago? But I love how there can be just this intersection of all these different groups or events happening. I remember there was a Friday night concert, and we were street dancing, and so we're like, we're gonna walk over to where they're performing, and then there was the. I'm pretty sure it was Lois Arthur, who's a faculty at the theater department, and they had their Brazilian carnival like parade walk through. So all of a sudden there's like the carnival walking, and we're like, oh, let's just like start like playing music with them, And there's this traveling street performer, like acrobats and it was just like, this is such a, it's so Iowa City, and it's such a like you can't really plan for those. All you can do is just like have these different events, and all of a sudden everybody's like, oh, this is Iowa City, right?
This is really cool. Yeah, it's one of the things I love about Iowa City too. Is there's always something going on, and so many fun things, and so many different people, and that's what makes it so much fun. So where can people get your book?
I always point people towards Prairie Lights, and Jan, who's the owner, is lovely, and I always say, like, if you try to go and buy local. If you can't make that for whatever reason, it's basically any bookstore around here, especially in the area. You can go to Barnes and Noble and Amazon. You can get it, but again, like go
Prairie
through
Lights, support local.
Yeah. Also, we do have we did a partnership with the University of Iowa Libraries, and there's an audiobook version that is free that you can access. So if you Google University Libraries and the title of the book, We Heard It When We Were Young, it'll pop up, and you can listen to the whole thing. And there's we really tailored it towards educators, specifically like junior high and high school age. So there's a kind of an essay, questions, and some reading guides and things like that.
Nice.
So if you want to support local, you can buy the book, and then you can listen to the audio book for free. So yeah.
Is there an audio version in Spanish?
There's not yet.
That's
the one that's going to be that. That'll have to be someone else, because that's going to be. It was such a. I narrated the audiobook. And it was the first time I've ever done something like that, where I'm narrating for.
That's a different skill set, isn't it?
It gave me a whole new appreciation for voice acting and folks that narrate, long projects, because it's literally like it's a physical act, and you don't really think about it so much, but when you do these hour and a half sessions, you're like, I am spent. Especially because the book can get into some really like personal, some stuff that I really have to parse through some emotions, and those sessions in particular, and it kind of amps up the way that I did the arc of the book by the end. So I remember the last 4 sessions or so, I was like, I need to take a nap afterwards. So,
It had to be somewhat emotionally draining, just going through that, and trying to do justice to the book and your own story.
Yeah, because it's this tightrope of, being able to convey the emotion and the real emotion of it, and know that there's technical performance too, right? Like you have to articulate, you have to make sure that you're not going too fast or too slow. So you're kind of in the back of your mind, you're thinking about all this technical kind of, aspects of it. But at the same time, like, this is my story. This is real. And how do I convey that realistically too?
So how many take twos were there?
Oh, there was tons. The one at the end that was hilarious was, I didn't have one of those. I thought there was going to be more just like, I can't get this word, I can't get this word, and it only happened closer to the end. It might have been the penultimate session, the recording session, but it was, I had written, I'm not going to say it right now, inevitability, and that one was just, I must have had to go through that line 50, 60 times, because you get in your head and you're like, inevitability. Oh, that was a good one right there. I was like, why didn't I write it's inevitable? Like, I could do that.
There you go. Understandable.
Yeah, right.
Well, thank you so much for joining us for this creative conversation. And again, if you're interested in Chuy's book, check it out, Prairie Lights. Lots of other options, but yes, we definitely want to support local, and Prairie Lights is a gem of Iowa City for sure.
For sure.
So thank you so much.
Thank you, Lisa, for having me.